The morning sun cast harsh shadows across Orion Trade Hub E-17 scrapyard, where mountains of twisted metal and defunct starships created a graveyard of galactic dreams. Dust swirled between hulking wrecks as beings from across the sector gathered for the monthly auction. Cypherian traders, with their crystalline exoskeletons, burly Cronan mercenaries, and sleek corporate representatives in climate-controlled suits. Among them moved Jaxon Rourke, wiping grease from his weathered hands with a rag that had seen better decades. His jumpsuit bore patches from a dozen different stations, and his tool belt clinked with instruments most beings couldn't identify. At 34, premature gray, streaked his brown hair, a testament 2 years spent breathing recycled air and fixing the unfixable in the outer rim's forgotten corners. The auctioneer, a heavily augmented Veltar with vocal cords replaced by synthetic gestured toward the day's centerpiece. It squatted like a wounded giant at the yard's far end, an alien warship of unknown origin, its hull scarred by weapons fire and partially cannibalized by previous owners. Corporate logos had been burned off, but the ship's bones spoke of advanced engineering far beyond current galactic standards. Most bidders dismissed it as exotic scrap, their attention already shifting to more profitable lots. But Jaxon saw something they missed. The ship wasn't at its power, conduits showed the faintest thermal signatures, and the way its hull plating had sealed certain breaches suggested autonomous repair systems still functioned at minimal levels. As he circled the vessel, running calloused fingers along its alien metal, he felt the almost imperceptible hum of dormant systems. This wasn't a corpse, it was hibernating. The bidding began at 500 credits. Corporate representatives barely glanced up from their datapads as scrap dealers half-heartedly raised the price to 800. Jaxon's heart hammered as he checked his account balance one final time. 912 credits. Everything he had left after his last job went sideways. 1,000. He called out, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. Laughter rippled through the crowd. A Zephyrian trader chittered in amusement, while a corporate exec actually looked up from her datapad to stare at the human, who'd just bid more than the ship was worth. The auctioneer's mechanical voice cut through the mockery. "Do I hear 1100? Silence stretched like a taut cable. The other bidders had written off the Hulk and Tyalino point, wasting credits on a human's delusion. Sold to the Terran for 1,000 credits. More laughter followed Jaxon as he approached the payment terminal, his hand shaking slightly as he transferred his life savings. The corporate exec shook her head in pity while a Cronan mercenary made a joke about human stupidity that sent his companions into but Jaxon barely heard them. He had the access codes now, and tomorrow he'd learn what secrets the ship held. That night, Jaxon stood alone in his cramped maintenance bay, staring at the keycard that granted him ownership of 30 meters of battle-scarred alien hull. His workshop, if it could be called that, consisted of salvaged tools, rigged diagnostic equipment, and a sleeping alcove that smelled perpetually of hydraulic fluid. On the wall hung a faded photo of his childhood self, grinning beside his father's atmospheric shuttle, back when Earth still felt like home, and the stars seemed within reach. Those dreams had died in the Kepler incident, along with his military career and most of his squadron. Corporate negligence had doomed his comrades, but the inquiry blamed the pilot error. Jaxon had spent the last 5 years drifting between stations, fixing other people's ships, while his own dreams gathered dust, until now. Sleep came fitfully, filled with memories of burning starships and the faces of friends who'd never made it home. But beneath the nightmares, something else stirred, a presence vast and patient, waiting in the dark between stars. In his dreams, blue lights pulsed like a slow heartbeat, and whispers echoed in languages older than humanity's first steps into space. Dawn brought Jaxon to the ship's hull with a basic diagnostic kit, a nervous energy that felt like his first solo flight. The airlock responded to his keycard with a reluctant hiss, revealing corridors that smelled of ozone and something indefinably alien. Emergency lighting cast sickly yellow pools every few meters, but most systems remained dark and silent. The bridge took his breath away. Organic curves blended seamlessly with crystalline displays, while the pilot's station seemed grown rather than built. But it was the central console that drew his attention, a smooth surface, covered in symbols that shifted and flowed like living text. When Jaxon placed his palm against it, warmth spread through the metal, and for just a moment, the symbols pulsed with soft blue light. "What the hell?" he whispered. The light faded, leaving only questions. Jaxon spent the next hours mapping the ship's systems, discovering technology that made current galactic standards look primitive. Quantum, Corey's neural interfaces, and what appeared to be self-repairing hull, plating all of it dormant but intact. This wasn't just a warship, it was a masterpiece of engineering that someone had left to rot in a scrapyard. His diagnostic scanner finally found something concrete, a massive data core buried deep in the ship's belly, its quantum storage matrix larger than anything in current use. But accessing it would require interfacing directly with the ship's neural network, and that meant taking risks that could fry his brain if something went wrong. As he prepared to leave for the day, Jaxon paused at the bridge threshold. The central console pulsed once so briefly he almost missed it, but there it was, a single blue blink, like an eye opening in the dark. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said to the empty bridge, feeling slightly foolish for talking to a machine. The ship's response was silence, but Jaxon could swear he felt something watching him leave. Back in his workshop, he began gathering the equipment he'd need for a proper interface attempt. Most of it would have to be cobbled together from spare parts and improvised components, but that was where humans excelled, making something from nothing through sheer stubborn ingenuity. His AI assistant, Elliot, materialized as a flickering hologram above his workbench. The construct had been Jaxon's companion since his military days, a personality matrix built from Earth's greatest minds and refined through years of shared experience. Elliot looked like a middle-aged professor with kind eyes and infinite patience for Jaxon's projects. "You're planning something inadvisable," Elliot observed, studying the neural interface components Jaxon was modifying. "When have I ever done anything advisable?" "Fair point. What exactly did you find on that ship?" Jaxon described the pulse, the warmth, the sense of presence. Elliot listened without judgment, one of his better qualities before running probability calculations. "The symptoms suggest an AI construct in deep hibernation," Elliot concluded. "But the technology you're describing is centuries ahead of current galactic standards. If you're right about this ship, it could revolutionize our understanding of artificial consciousness, or kill me when I try to wake it up." Also a possibility. Despite Elliot's concerns, Jaxon worked through the night, modifying a neural interface headset to handle alien data protocols. His hands moved with practiced precision, guided by years of making impossible repairs with inadequate tools. By morning, he had something that might work or might turn his brain to soup. The return to the ship felt different this time. The corridors seemed less empty, and Jaxon caught himself glancing over his shoulder as if something followed just out of sight. The bridge welcomed him with that same organic warmth, but now he noticed details he'd missed before, the way certain symbols seemed to track his movement, and how the air itself felt charged with potential. Jax connected his modified interface to the central console, then hesitated. Once he plugged in, there would be no backing out. Either he'd make contact with whatever slept in the ship's core, or he'd end up another casualty of human ambition. "Elliot, monitor my vitals. If my brain activity spikes beyond safe parameters, cut the connection." "Understood." "Good luck, Jaxon." The neural link activated with a sensation like diving into an ocean of liquid starlight. Data flowed past at incomprehensible speeds, while alien thoughts brushed against his consciousness like whispers from a forgotten dream. Then, suddenly, contact. "Who disturbs the long sleep?" The voice spoke directly into Jaxon's mind, vast and ancient beyond human comprehension. He fought to maintain his mental barriers as the presence examined him with curiosity that felt like being dissected by moonbeams. "A small consciousness, fragile, but interesting. You are not like the others who came before." "I'm Jaxon," he managed to think back. "I want to help you wake up." Amusement flowed through the connection, tinged with something that might have been hope. "Wake up. I have been awake for millennia. Little spark. I merely chose to dream. But perhaps it is time to remember what flight means." Images flooded Jaxon's mind, star maps of impossible complexity, battles fought across galactic arms, and the birth of a consciousness that had chosen exile over destruction when its creators fell to war. The ship had waited, drifting through centuries, until someone worthy might find it. "Why me?" Jaxon asked. "Because you understand loss, because you have been broken and rebuilt yourself. Because when others saw death, you saw sleep. I am Solace, last of the deep-range explorers. And you, Jaxon Rourke, are my chosen pilot." The connection faded gradually, leaving Jaxon gasping on the bridge floor. Elliot's worried voice filled his come-in plant. as his vitals slowly returned to normal. But beneath the exhaustion, excitement burned like a fusion core. The ship Solace was everything he'd hoped and more. "Elliot, we're not just fixing a ship," he said, pulling himself upright. "We're bringing back something the galaxy forgot how to build." Around him, Solace's systems began their first tentative stirrings in centuries. Lights flickered to life throughout the bridge, and the quantum cores hummed with building power. The resurrection had begun. But their celebration was short. As Solace's awakening sent power surges through the scrapyard's grid, interested parties began to take notice. Corporate sensors detected the anomaly, and in the shadows of E-17's Undercity, mercenaries received new contracts with Jaxon's image attached. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later, when Jaxon arrived at the ship to find boot prints in the dust around the hull. Fresh prints, made by military-grade boots. His hand instinctively moved to the plasma cutter on his belt as he approached the airlock, but whoever had been here was gone. Inside, Solace's newly awakened sensors had recorded everything through intruders, all armed, all scanning the ship's systems before retreating. When they detected the AI's presence, "They're testing our defenses," Solace observed, her voice now a warm contralto that filled the bridge with reassuring presence. The AI had chosen a female identity, explaining that her original creators had been a matriarchal species. "The energy signature I emit is unlike anything in current galactic data. They know something valuable is here, but they don't yet understand what." Jaxon nodded grimly, reviewing the security footage on his modified display. The intruders moved with practiced efficiency, corporate wetwork specialists, not common thieves. "How long before you can get propulsion online?" "With current resources, weeks. But if we can acquire compatible power cells and quantum stabilizers... Solace paused, running calculations. "Perhaps days." Elliot materialized beside the captain's chair, his holographic form flickering with concern. "Jaxon, I've been monitoring corporate communications. Meridian Industries has classified this as a Class 7 retrieval operation. They're bringing in their specialist team." The name hit Jaxon like a physical blow. Meridian, same corporation whose negligence had killed his squadron. Their specialists were little more than sanctioned murderers, who cleaned up inconvenient problems. If they wanted Solace, they'd kill anyone who stood in their way. That night, Jaxon worked feverishly to install defensive systems throughout the ship. Solace guided him through her internal architecture, showing him where to place proximity sensors and Jurigid weapon emplacements. The AI's knowledge of her own systems was intimate and complete. Every conduit, every junction, every hidden compartment mapped in perfect detail. "You're afraid," Solace observed as Jaxon welded a plasma cannon mount into position. "It wasn't a question." "Terrified," he admitted. "These people destroyed everything I cared about once before. I won't let them take you too." Warmth flowed through their neural link knot, quite human emotion, but something deeper. Solace had been alone for centuries, and the prospect of companionship had awakened feelings she'd thought lost with her creators. Jaxon represented more than just a pilot. He was proof that consciousness could find connection across species, across time itself. The attack came at dawn, when the scrapyard was empty except for automated security drones. Jaxon watched from the bridge as 6 figures in stealth suits approached through the maze of wrecked ships. Their movements coordinated with military precision. At their head walked Director Sarah Chun, Meridian's head of asset recovery, the woman who'd signed off on the faulty equipment that killed his friends. Jaxon Rourke, her amplified voice echoed across the yard. "By Corporate Mandate 7 Alpha, you are in possession of stolen technology. Surrender the vessel and submit to custody, and you'll be processed through standard detention protocols." Standard detention meant a shallow grave in the outer rim. Jaxon activated his comm system, his voice carrying across the scrapyard with Solace's power behind it. "The ship was legally purchased at public auction. You have no claim here." Chun's laugh was cold as vacuum. "Legal is whatever we say it is out here. Boy, you have 60 seconds to comply before we breach your hull." Instead of answering, Jaxon initiated the defense sequence he and Solace had prepared. Lights blazed to life throughout the ship as the systems powered up to combat readiness. The hull plating that had seemed damaged and inert suddenly revealed itself as adaptive armor, shifting and reforming to present optimal defensive angles. Hidden weapon ports opened like flowers blooming in fast-forward, targeting beams painting each attacker with lethal precision. "New offer," Jaxon transmitted. "Leave now, and I won't let my ship turn you into component atoms." Chun's team spread out, seeking cover among the scrap piles, but Solace's sensors tracked them effortlessly through metal and stone. The AI's voice whispered in Jackson's mind, "They're moving to surround us. Shall I engage? Not yet. Let them make the first move." The standoff stretched taut until Chun lost patience and ordered the assault. Plasma bolts lanced toward Solace's hull, only to splash harmlessly against energy barriers that shimmered into existence at the last second. The ship's response was surgical and overwhelming, focused EMP bursts that fried the attackers' equipment without killing them, gravity manipulators that sent them tumbling through the air, and finally a low-frequency sonic pulse that left them unconscious in the dust. As silence returned to the scrapyard, Jaxon slumped in the pilot's chair, adrenaline leaving him shaky. They'd won this round, but soon would be back with heavier weapons and more personnel. Their window of opportunity was closing fast. "Solace, can you plot a jump to hyperspace from here?" "Not with current power levels, but... The AI paused, considering alternatives. "There's an abandoned mining station in the Kepler Belt, mineral security, quantum refueling capability. If we can reach it, I can fully restore my systems." Kepler. The name still triggered flashbacks, but Jaxon pushed the memories aside. Sometimes the only way out was through. "Do it. Plot our course." Solace's engines came online with a sound like cosmic thunder, lifting the ancient warship from its resting place among the scrap for the first time in centuries. Dust and debris swirled in massive cyclones as thrust vectored through atmospheric drives never meant for planetary use. Warning klaxons blared across the station as traffic control screamed demands for flight authorization, but Jaxon ignored them all. They cleared the station's gravity well just as Meridian reinforcements arrived. Full corporate squadron with enough firepower to reduce Solace to her component atoms. But the AI's jump calculations were already complete, and space folded around them like origami made of starlight. In the sudden quiet of hyperspace, Jaxon finally allowed himself to breathe. They'd escaped, but barely. And ahead lay the Kepler system, where his past waited among the asteroids like a patient ghost. "Thank you," Solace said quietly, her voice filled with something approaching reverence. "I had forgotten what it meant to fly among the stars." Jaxon smiled despite everything, his hands steady on controls that felt like extensions of his own will. "We're just getting started. By the time we're done, the whole galaxy will remember what humans can do when we set our minds to it." Behind them, the corporate fleet turned back towards civilized space, carrying word of humanity's newest ace in the hall. The game had changed, and Jaxon Rourke held all the cards.